Okay, look, we're in Torah Ohr by the first Rebbe of Chabad, and the Rebbe is commenting on this statement that God makes about Sodom and Amorah. By the way, where they got Gomorrah from, I don't know where this is Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah. Amorah, is there some sort of a nation that they can't say? I can understand Russian. There's some Russian that they can't say, hey, ha. They say gay. But the Russians, there's some, maybe all of them. So, okay, but anyway, that's totally irrelevant to here. Let's go. Erdan.
How's it said in Hebrew? Amorah?
Amorah.
Oh, okay.
Sodom v'Amorah.
I always read it in English. I do not.
Erdana. I will go down and I'll see what's going on. It says, Hine. Hakatza'akata ulashin nekeva. V'kein haba'a. I will go down and see if their shouts, the screams of the people, haba'a, which is coming, that it is coming to me. This is, in Hebrew, there's male and female genders. I don't know if that's politically correct anymore, but that's the way it is. Female and male genders. So, God, for instance, is always referred to as male. Usually. Right? Why? Because God is the giving factor, coming from above to below. The Jewish people are usually referred to as the world, as feminine, like Mother Earth, because it receives. The earth receives everything, so therefore it's called feminine. The feminine is the receiver, and the masculine is usually the giver, from below, above to below. Usually that's the way it goes. So this, it says, God says, I will go and come down, and I will see if, according to their screams that are coming to me, the screams and that are coming is feminine. Asu is Lashon, I'm sorry, Kain Haba, the Asu is Lashon Nekeva and Lashon Zachar. And when it says Asu, they did, it's both feminine and male, masculine. So what's going on over here? Sometimes the screams that are coming from below are called feminine, and Asu is feminine and masculine. What does it mean? I will go down and I will see. Halo mi shamayim hibid Hashem. God doesn't have to go down himself. He can just look down. If you want to, say God's presence is more in the heaven, but God looks down. It says mina shamayim hibit. That what it says, like their shout, their screaming. This is a scream that comes from the aspect of severity. This is what's called God's kingship. Shenikra din, dina de malchuta dina. This is what's called the judgment of God. Rak shehu dina rafia. This is what's called weak judgment. I'll try to explain this. Melech b'mishpat yamid oretz. And that's what it says, Hakatza'akata, Haketza'akata, Haba, that her scream, that it comes, feminine, that she comes, the scream comes, like it says, Be'erev ba'a, Rachel ba'a. It comes up, feminine comes up. Okay, what's going on over here? We see that God creates the world. And the world we see is very, very complex. That's what science deals with, the laws of the world. And the laws of the world are very, exact, pretty much exact. There's sometimes if you go out of the whatever is the framework, right? There's all these new different types, theoretical mathematics and things like that. I don't have any idea what this is, but. Nevertheless, the world science is based on the idea that the world has laws. It's like exact, right? All of science. A dog does not become a cat does not become a tree. Things have limits. There's the biggest elephant in the world, the smallest molecule in the world. There's nothing bigger than this. There's nothing smaller than this. Everything has its limits. Where do these limits come from? From God. God makes everything limited. Even though within this limitation, there's also unlimited, because theoretically there could be an unlimited number of molecules or whatever. Okay, but so here we have limitation. Where does this limitation come? That comes from God's, what we call his personality, his sfirot, God's gevura, God's severity. It says in the Bible that God made man in his image. Man is in the image of God. What does that mean? We see that God does not have an image. What it means is that somehow or other, and this is explained a little bit in the beginning of this mimer over here, God has this unusual ability to, want to call it, articulate himself. He can make from his oneness, his unity, he can make divisions and boundaries and limitations and definitions. Definitions. So one of these things is what's called gevura. Gevura is God's power. Power can do two things. It can limit from above to below, power, but it's also, that's limitation. Like you take a hose, you concentrate in one place, it comes out powerful. It's concentration, limitation. But on the other hand, this thing of power is also to change, to make change. This was embodied by Yitzchak, Isaac. Abraham, it says, was the aspect of love. Isaac was the aspect of power, gevura. And he dug wells. He revealed new things. He went into a desert where there was no water. He dug a well and he revealed water. To make big changes. And that's the whole, God creates the world constantly, but there can be a reversal. The world can reverse. The world can send up energy to God. That generally is the idea of prayer. Prayer. Strangely, prayer affects God. There's an argument about this. But nevertheless, prayer, according to the Arizal, according to Kabbalah, the prayer, God is affected by our prayers. It's called eteruta de la eila, eteruta de la tata. An arousal from above comes from an arousal from below. Why? Because God is intimately interested and connected and affected in a way by the world, because that's just what he decided to do. I mean, so this aspect of gevura coming from below to above, this is the gevura of God. This is what's called the gevura, reversing the process, coming from below to above. Let's explain this in here. Okay, Herschel. Hine, mitchila yesh lahaktim lashon shagur b'divrei Chazal galui v'yadua lifnei misha omar v'haya olam. It is known and revealed before the one who spoke and created the world. Galui v'yadua davka. That everything in front of God is revealed and known. Ki hine ha-philosophim, the philosophers, nilu lahasig inyan hashgacha pratis. They were impossible. They were unable to understand the whole idea of hashgacha pratis. Hashgacha pratis, very, very essential idea to Chassidut, to the Baal Shem Tov, to loving God, to fearing God, to being aware of what the amazingness of God is, what's called hashgacha pratit. What's hashgacha pratit mean? The word hashgacha pratit, excuse me, hashgacha pratit means that everything that happens in the world, everything, this is according to the Baal Shem Tov, everything that happens in the world, a worm gets a leaf, a lion eats a fish, whatever it does, everything that happens in the world is directed by God. Everything that happens. The poem, it says, what is it? Mishpatecha tahum rabba. It says that God's judgment is even on these little snails and little worms that are in the ocean, which one is eaten by which fish and by which the it says in the Talmud. So everything that happens in the world, everything without any exception, is directed by God. And when it comes to human free will, it gets more complicated, because free will is this interesting creation that God made that really gives a human being the ability to go against God. Right? Hashgacha pratit means everything that happens is exactly what God wants. God wants you to go against His will. So it's a big question. Okay, but that question is certainly dealt with. It's the main question. Hashgacha pratit. Kamo en adam nokaf etzbo milamata, elin ken machriz alav milamayla. A person cannot move his finger from below unless it was announced in the heavenly worlds that he's going to do it. The kasha lahem, that the philosophers, or those people who try to be too intellectual, or people that are too affected by philosophy, they have a big problem. Since God is one and alone, the true oneness, how can it possibly be Yedias Hashem Yisbarech hapratim v'hashgacha pratis? How can it possibly be that God knows every little detail? Latei dato al inyanim rabim, to put His mind on so many details. Every protozoa that eats its protozoa next to it, or whatever it does, it is osmosis. I forgot all those ideas. Shari zeh bechinas riboy. And so everything that's happening in the world has an effect on God. God, like, he all of a sudden he knows this thing, and He finds this thing, and He directs this thing. There's so many things He's directing. That's only in the world. What about all the stars? What about all the stars and all the molecules that are going up on the stars? And who knows, maybe there's even life on other planets, and God has to direct them also, right? So God is really directing every single thing that happens in the whole entire creation.
After that, He still listens to our prayers.
Right, and He listens to our prayers still his time. I tell you the joke. I have like 4 jokes. I don't know if I told you this. A rich man, he has a multi-million-dollar business deal. If he makes it, he'll make it big. If he loses, he'll lose everything that he's got. He can't sleep. He goes to the Kotel, the Western Wall. 3 o'clock in the morning, he's praying to God. All of a sudden, there comes this poor guy. It's Thursday. Poor guy comes, God, I need 100 shekels for Shabbos. I haven't got any money. Just give me 100 shekels for Shabbos, please. So the rich guy turns to the poor guy, and he says, "Here, look, take the 100 shekels, and please don't bother God. I'm busy. Take the $100 and go home.
Big deal.
I'm working on a big deal, right? Don't disturb him. I've got his attention." That's what it means. God really pays attention to every cat that's hungry, every mouse that's going to get caught by. Come on, that's ridiculous. Says, listen. I mean, if you think about it, what do you mean it's ridiculous? God creates all these things. If He creates them all, so He says, no, God creates them according to the system. He made a system that He created the first mouse or the first 2 mice, and they came out of the Noah's Ark. Whatever it was, and from that, right? God made the principles. He made the laws of nature, and that's what they say. But God Himself, and that seems to be according to the narrative of the Torah. Then once in a while, God looks, and here, this is the best example. God says, "I'm going down, and I'm going to see." Oh, there can't be a better proof that God does not know, and does not involved in everything than this. Here it is. God says, "I have to go down." Right? God is busy with all these astronomical, spiritual, whatever it's called, things. And he says, "Hey, somebody's screaming. I have to go down and see." Like the rich person says to the poor person. Chazal, says the Rebbe, but the Baal Shem Tov knew what he was talking about. The Baal Shem Tov said there's hashgacha pratis. Everything is directed by God. Everything, every little detail. V'chazal kivnu l'taretze, and the rabbis want to say b'divor echad ba'omrom galui v'yadua livnei. The rabbis wanted to answer this and say galui v'yadua livnei kisei kavodecha. It is known as revealed. What does he say? What's the language over here? L'dua livnei misha ba'omer b'bora olam. Here it is. Let's see. Galui v'yadua livnei misha Omar v'bor ha'olam. Galui v'yadua. Galui v'yadua livnei misha she'omar v'ha'olam. Right. It is known and revealed before the one who spoke. That's how the rabbis want to answer the philosophers and say everything is known by God. She'en yediato kedimion yediat adam. It's not that God knows it. It is known. God's knowledge is not like the knowledge of people. When a person knows is a davar shedato hisiga davar, a person understands something, umitchila lo yado, but before he didn't know it. Ukeshiyodea davar, when he knew it, hari dato malubeshes biyadiazu, then his mind becomes a human being. His mind becomes enclosed in this thing. Umachshavazu, in this thought, shenotin dato lasiga. Right? You want to learn a new language? You're going to want to learn Russian? To speak Russian? Before he didn't know Russian, right? He didn't know Russian, right? The teacher stands in front of the class and speaks the whole thing in Russian and says, we don't understand anything. He says, very good. You will understand. I promise you. In another month, you'll be speaking just like me. But before he didn't know. Well, no. It's maybe the same thing with God. God is, how can you say a thing like that? I mean, if so, you're adding something to God. That can't be. So the rabbis say, Galui v'yadua. Everything is known and revealed to God. It's all known and revealed. It didn't add anything on to God. V'kodem yediato hayadato panui. It's not that before God knew this thing, he didn't know it. Harizeh b'chinas shinoi. This would be a change. Masha'en kein lamaila, which is not case by God. Yediato yisbrech shiyodea kol ha'olamot, that God knows all the worlds, uproteim, in every little detail. Ena inyan shedato mitlabeshet v'nitfeset b'zeh. It's not that this thing grabs God, right? Like the rich person says to the poor guy, don't disturb God. Ella al derech galui v'yadua. It's like known and revealed. Shahakal galui v'yadua lifanov. Everything is known in front of God. Mimela, automatically. Ve'en tzorech liot nitfas umitlabesh b'hadavar hayadua. And God does not have to pay attention to what is known. Doesn't have to. If so, big question. Here it says in the Bible the opposite. God is saying to the angels or whoever he's speaking to, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to, what does he have to go down? Galui v'yadua. Mi b'kol shechein mima shemechaya u'mehave hadavar. Shelo al yedei yislabshus b'davar, kim al yedei heyosusov v'kolmim. This is how much. It's hard for you to understand how God knows everything automatically. It's hard for you to know. I mean, first of all, don't suppose that God is like a person, or God is like an angel, or God is like a spirit, or God is a power, or God is a level, or God is a what do you want to call it? An aspect of infinite consciousness, right? Or infinite reality, or infinite this, right? God is all those things. He certainly is all those things. But the fact is, God creates everything. He creates everything constantly. God creates not everything constantly. He doesn't create constantly. He creates time. God creates time. This whole thing, the idea of constantly, is a term which is only relevant to the framework of time. God creates that whole framework. Before this world was created, there was no before. There was no time. After the 6,000 years, whatever of this world, there's not going to be any more time, because time is just a creation. Time is not a real, absolute existence. Right? God just decided, for whatever reason it was, he's going to do this thing called time and space and people. And what we do is really eternal if we do what Hashem wants. Nevertheless, God creates everything. And he creates everything from nothing. He creates time as well. In other words, by God, there's no such thing as past, present, and future separate from him. That God lives in the present, and the future he doesn't know, and the past is something that he remembers. That's to us, that's the way it is. If that's the way it is to us, because that's based on certain spiritual principles. There's a book which is called a Sefer Yetzirah, and it explains different principles of the creation that God used. What is time and what is this? But nevertheless, all these things are creation. So if God creates everything, and there's a lot of details, every little fly or flea or whatever it is, amoeba, has its circulatory system and its respiratory system, and its, I think amoebas have a respiratory, don't they? Who knows what? Okay, let's leave the amoebas. Anyway, they have systems that keep them alive. It's very complicated. Even plants, right? Even plants have their xylems and phloems or something. I remember I learned this a long time ago. There's a whole system with plants. There's some male plants and female plants. Some plants they're both female and male in themselves. Anyway, it's very complicated. The world is a very complicated world, right? You want to be able to go into botany. It's fantastic. It's just tremendously interesting. If you're a little bit interested in that, it's tremendously interesting. Right, and there's plants that have certain qualities to them, and certain productive qualities, and certain healing qualities. Very amazing. All these little details are being created by God. So if God is creating everything all the time, so it's not that hard to understand that God knows everything. Right? Who can create? You can create anything. You can't create anything. You can reform things, but you can't create anything. But God is creating everything. Says the Rebbe even more. God creates everything from this aspect of which is called Soviv Kol Omin, that surrounds all the worlds. In other words, God creates everything from a power of general creation. So we can't see that God is creating everything, but He is doing it. It's a tremendous miracle. If God is creating everything, for sure He knows everything, so God does not have to pay attention. If so, if everything is really known and revealed to God, it's not relevant at all, this question, that by knowing something, or there's things that God is ignorant of, and when He knows it, it adds something to Him. This is only by people who are ignorant of things and are not totally aware. Human beings have to use their mind and concentrate on a thing and then understand it and grasp it. Beforehand, they did not know that thing, which is not the case of God. God knows everything even before it happens. There's no such thing by God as before and after. We cannot understand this, but that's the way it is. That's what it means. My thoughts are not like your thoughts, says God. Because everything is revealed in front of God. If so, the question is going to be, why does God have to say, I'm going to go down and understand? Hine Kativ, it says, Shiva Eila Eine Hashem. It's in the prophecy of Zechariah. And God says, He shows them a menorah, shows them this prophetic vision. And God says, these 7 are the eyes of God. Hema mishotatim b'kol ha'oretz. They, how do you say, observe. The skir is a Hebrew word, skira. They observe the whole entire world. They observe the whole world. Mishotatim is masculine. They go down. These are the eyes of God that observe the whole world. Because even it says, Einei Hashem mishotatot b'kol ha'aretz. Another place it says that the eyes of God also observe the whole world, but it's feminine. Mishotatot is feminine. So one place it says the eyes of God, mishotatim, they observe the whole world. They wander through the whole world. They observe the whole. Another place it says mishotatot, that they observe the whole world, but in a feminine. It uses feminine. What the eyes of God are feminine or they're masculine? What are they? Well, first of all, it says the eyes of God are masculine. They're observing the world. And then it says, no, the eyes of God, they're feminine. They're observing the world. Same exact word, feminine, masculine. What's going on? For Yeshlav, we have to understand the inyan, mishotatim, mishotatot, that which it says that God's eyes are masculine, actively watching the world, and passively watching the world, mashma, shenimshach lir'ot ula'ayin b'davar. In any case, both of these languages, masculine and feminine, it seems to indicate, like the sentence that we had here, that God has to make a special effort in order to observe the world, to make the rounds. I forgot the word. Was it when a guard, he makes his rounds, he observes something, observes the world. Okay. Anyway, it seems that God has to make the rounds and that he has to observe surveillance. He has to survey and make surveillance of the whole world. So he has to make an effort. La'ayin b'davar al yedei riyazu. Harizeh kamo b'chinas islabshus. This is like the question that the philosophers had. This is like God being enclosed in the world. Shenir v'yadua. V'zelech yor ha'epech. This is the opposite of what we just finished saying, that everything is galui v'yadua. The idea is like this. Ki noda shebe'eser sfirot yesh orot v'kelim. It's known that in what we call the 10 spheres of God, there are lights and vessels. Now, I told you this is a little bit Kabbalistic. But if you want to appreciate God, the only way you can appreciate it is have some concept of what is these 10 sfirot of God. You don't have to get too Kabbalistic, and you don't have to know gematrias and things like that, even though it's nice, but you don't have to. The idea is we want to come to recognize God. It's one of the purposes of man. God created man so that he would recognize God. And when you recognize God, so you act differently. As you want to recognize God, what's there to recognize? I mean, God is just infinite. That's it. You can't recognize God or recognize that. Is that even permissible to say according to Judaism? I mean, he's just infinite. He's incomprehensible. He's unfathomable, huh?
You can sense it.
Yeah, you sense it to this. No, it says, but you have to love God. You have to try to understand God. It says, Das Elokei Avicha. You have to understand God. You have to love God. You can't love God if you don't understand something. You have to understand. So it says, the only way you can understand God is you have to have some, like a ladder or something to grab onto, that you can understand God. Right? God creates the world. What does that mean? He creates the world. Right? A scientist comes along and says, "You're nuts." What do you mean God creates the world? You have some sort of an instrument that measures this? You've seen this? You know it? My heart. Your heart. Go to a psychiatrist. That's what your heart feels. We're talking about science. According to science, there's no creator. What are you talking about? Where's their creator? Heart. So says the Rebbe like this. You want to start to understand God. First of all, you have to have faith. You have to have faith that there's such a thing as God. You have to have a feeling, right? But let's try to get this a little bit sort of understandable. So there's what to love. There's what's called God's 10 sfirot. The 10 sfirot means that God has 10 infinite, incomprehensible aspects to him. But the fact that they're aspects means it's already a little bit closer to comprehension. And that also enables us to understand what it means a little bit that we are created in God's image. That we are created in God's image. What does it mean? A person has intelligence. Right? This is the 3rd chapter of the Tanya. A person has intelligence. A person has understanding. A person has faith. That's called intellect. Chachma bin and das. A person has love. A person has awe. A person has what do you call it? Power to do things. He has a feeling of balance, purpose. That's chesed, gevura, tiferes, right? People make decisions. They according to what they feel. Sometimes you have to surrender. Sometimes you have to overpower. How do you say, flight or fight? Make these decisions to be attached to something. To this thing is real to me. To make what appeals to me. What I'm going to be. How do you say to be faithful to be devoted to? That's netzach hod yesod, and malchut is action. God has all these things also. Here we see the beauty of God. That's tiferet. We see the power of God. Okay, it's not really of God, but it's incomprehensible. It shows that there's something going on over here. Go ahead. Says the Rebbe, that's what's called the 10 sfirot. Let's look and see. Ha'inyan noda, shebe'eser sfirot, there are lights and vessels. Ki bechinat chesed and gevura, this aspect of chesed and gevura, zeu bechinat kli, this is a vessel. But the light is the the power of God that goes into these vessels. So when we say God's power, we see a beautiful sunset. We see God's beauty. So all we see is the outside of this beauty. We see God's beauty, but we don't see God himself. But nevertheless, it's God's beauty. We see something inside that's not understandable. That's what's called the light. Mikol inan mirot kolal, that God himself is not any of these emotions or intellect at all. This is what we talked about in the beginning of this mimer. Rak sha'or mitlabesh b'kli shehu chesed gevura v'shar mirot she'em anikron b'chinet kelim. So all these 10 sfirot, these 10 different aspects of God, this is what's called the vessels of God. This is what's called the vessels of God. And it's the same thing with a person. You know, you catch the boss in a good mood, you catch him in a bad mood, you catch him when he wants to be alone, you catch him but it's all the boss. Sometimes the boss is very severe, sometimes he's very kind, but that's just expressions of his. But he himself is something that's inexpressible. He is his essence, what the essence of a human being is, right? It's inexpressible. A proof is, now there's a person, if he's unconscious, you can't kill a person that's unconscious. A person that's in a deep coma, right? You can't shoot him. Sometimes they can take away life support from the person, so that on his own passes away. But a person is a person, even though he has no qualities whatsoever. To him, he's a person. That's this terrible thing they're trying to do now with abortions. Right? A child, a little baby, has no qualities to him. There's no intelligence, no nothing, no nothing. Not a person. It says no. The qualities that a person has, that's what we call the vessels. That's the outside. The person himself is something that's infinite. It's a soul. You can't explain what it is. It's even more than a potential. Even more than a potential. She'em magbilim et or, that these vessels, they limit the light. These aspects limit the light. Ubahem v'al yadam nimshach or liot mechaya nivraim. In order that God, we're talking about God, in order for God to interact with the world, he has what we call these 10 sfirot. They're infinite. God's infiniteness is found within them. But the external of these sfirot are called vessels, and that's how God reacts with the world. In the beginning, only the spiritual world. There's what's called 4 different worlds, 4 different dimensions. But in the beginning, just the spiritual worlds. That's all these ideas of Kabbalah that we're talking about. But the end point of it is that the essence of God creates this physical world. This physical world is very important to God. But we have to appreciate God a little bit. We have to love God. In order to do that, we have to at least a little bit approach this idea of God's personality as 10 sfirot. Shaliot hidavu, that through these 10 spheres of God, kindness, severity, then God can create the angel, Mechoel, Gavriel, that's kindness. Machan and Mechoel, they receive from Chesed. Gavriel, they receive from Gevura. The camp of Mechoel, they receive from God's love. Gevura, they receive from God's power. This could not be by means of God's light, but only by means of God's vessels, as we will talk about more, God willing, tomorrow.